You know, I'm starting to wonder if this is actually a cooking channel. What if I told you in order to get protein powder, you gotta make pizza first? Oh God. All right, I don't know what you expected from that, but there was no way I was catching that. I'm just gonna build it on here. It's hard to find someone that doesn't really like pizza. Pizza's not really known to be the healthiest of foods. It's like the #1 go-to cheat meal for all those meatheads out there. I am slightly projecting, but most of the pizzas that you consumed is directly related to the creation of protein powder. That's through the creation of garbage. Milk is split into solids and liquids in a factory. The solids, called curds, are typically saved to produce cheese. The liquid is known as whey, but only about 10% of milk produces curd. So for every piece of cheese created, there's like 9 times more of that in trash. Nobody knew what to do with this level of waste. This much whey was being fed to animals, and some cultures would even ferment and drink it. But in the 1950s, factories were dumping their whey into rivers, which essentially turned them into sewers. It was bad, and it was starting to become a huge problem until somebody discovered how to make a drink for big, muscly men. And also small babies. We're using 4 gallons of milk and adding some citric acid into it while heating it to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Afterwards, we're gonna add some rennet that was mixed into some water and stir it for about 25 seconds. It's gonna sit for about 30 minutes until it looks like soft tofu and breaks cleanly. Then we're gonna cut it into a crosshatch in order to let the whey seep out. We're heating it up to 105 Fahrenheit and gently stirring it and letting it rest for about 5 minutes. Now we're gonna strain the curd out and save it for later to make mozzarella. This is the garbage that we're gonna keep. But it's still a long ways before it becomes protein powder. So the technology that turned garbage into getting ripped because your ex broke up with you fuel is something called ultrafiltration. The whey is basically pushed through these super fine filters under pressure, and it purifies the liquid until it mostly just has protein. Protein purification machine, $15,000. Which brings us to our sponsor. Just kidding, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this the cheap way. I don't have any money. We're gonna put the whey into plastic bags, and they're gonna go straight into the freezer. So one of the main things that we're filtering out is lactose, because right now whey is about 0.1% fat, 1% protein, and 5% lactose, which is sugar, meaning it's a carb. Whey is mostly water, but also there's 5 times more lactose than there is protein. So according to this paper, we're gonna do something called cryo concentration. It's supposed to increase the protein concentration by like 6 times. If this doesn't work, I really have no idea what I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna take a bowl, a strainer, and place my ice on top. Once we have those solid blocks of ice, we're gonna let the blocks melt and get rid of that melty liquid water. And in order to make sure I know when to stop, I'm using something called a refractometer. So this is supposed to use like light in order to measure the sugar concentration inside of a liquid. And in our case, it's lactose. Yeah, I feel like I'm just writing an essay first draft and submitting it. Hopefully, future Trung or editing Trung is going to know more about how this science works. But until then, I'm winging it. That's supposed to measure the amount of stuff that's inside of the liquid. So the number should go up as the concentration of the liquid increases. And when it starts going down, that's when I know when to stop. So I shot everything I was saying earlier as a time lapse. So it just ended up like a fast forwarded jumbled mess. This is all the liquid that I strained earlier. And this is pretty much pure lactose. And for the ice part, I'm remelting it and we're gonna do it 2 more times. We're just gonna cut through 3 more days of work in 1 second. So I f***ed up. In this block of ice is almost all lactose. That means the liquid that was draining out, that I threw out, was all the protein. So the refractometer basically tells you that there is stuff inside of liquid, but it doesn't tell you whether it's protein or sugar. So it was doing its job. It just, I didn't know how to read. So the scientific paper that I was basing this off of was using a vacuum. So in that study, the lactose drained out into the liquid. Since I wasn't using a vacuum, another paper that I read that's more closer to what I was doing, melted it normally in room temperature. Turns out that when you freeze whey, lactose freezes with the water first. And then the last thing to freeze is protein. So that means when you take the ice out and try to melt it, the first thing to come out is protein, which is what I threw out. I'm gonna have to redo this, and it's gonna take me days, and it's only gonna take you a second. Factories do something called spray drying, where they take the protein liquid and spray it into the air of a container that is heated. So those droplets of water vaporize almost instantly, and it separates the water from the protein at a lower temperature too. This not only saves energy and time, but it also keeps the integrity of the protein. Denatured protein is still okay to eat, and our body can digest it, but if the protein's denatured too much, it makes it hard to dissolve into water when it's a powder. $32,000 for a spray dryer. These are starting to look real sexy right now. So I made more cheese and redid all the freezing, keeping only the liquid this time. And we're gonna add a little bit of stabilizer. Soy lecithin is like a common ingredient in protein powder that makes it easily dissolvable. It makes it more like a dust rather than just a powder that clumps. I'm gonna line some baking sheets with some parchment paper and then just pour all the liquid in. I'm gonna let it dry on keep warm because it's around 160 Fahrenheit, where it's hot enough to protect the mixture from bacteria and low enough for the temperature to keep most of the proteins from denaturing, until it forms like this pasty sheet. Then I'm gonna put everything into my dehydrator until it becomes... So according to the paper, cryoconcentrating protein would give you a liquid with about 20% protein and 4 to 5% lactose. That means if you did everything right, this dry powder should have about 80% protein content, which is kind of nuts. But, you know, I did this all at home, and I'm probably gonna do things wrong. Now, people are gonna be mad if I do this, and also if I don't do this. So, I used to think the best way to do things was to be as efficient as possible, to get the best results with the least effort, min-maxing. I got good at the game. I was treating a patient who had a brain tumor. She looked like my grandmother, weak, confused, and still hopeful. I needed more time, but insurance only covered 20 minutes. When I asked if I could treat her longer, I was told no, it was a liability. If something happened outside of those 20 minutes, they can get sued. I could lose my license. So I listened. I did what was expected. Just like I had before, just like I would again. Because for most of my life, that's what I did. I thought I was playing a game, but really, I was playing myself. The more I chased expectations, the more I minimized my growth. I wasn't trying to get better, I was trying to get by. But through cooking, I found my way again. Yeah, that definitely smells like pizza. I don't treat patients anymore, but if someone needs my help, I'll be there. Failure isn't efficient. Caring too much isn't efficient. Starting over isn't efficient. And that's okay. It's okay that it's hard. It's okay that it's taking longer than you thought. And it's okay that nobody noticed your hard work. Oh my God, that tastes like vomit. Because it's not about what you're building. It's about who you're building. At least the pizza tastes good. Have a nice day. See you in the next one. And that person is you.